Thank you for the warm introduction, and good morning and happy Sabbath to everyone. Or good afternoon, rather. It's past 12. So, we're all aware of the war going on in Iran right now. And I want you to imagine that you have been commanded by the authorities to join the war. You have been given a gun, a weapon, and you've been told you need to go and fight. And you need to take the lives of people who you don't know. How would you be feeling in that situation if you were commanded to do that? And if you refuse, there will be consequences. Your life will be destroyed. What would you do if you were faced in that situation? Would you compromise your faith as a Christian, as an Adventist, and try to take the lives of people? Or would you hold firm and stand up for your convictions, for what you believe in? And so the scenario that I'm describing, it's not a hypothetical. This actually happened to a young man named Desmond Doss. Desmond grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia in 1919. And like many of us, he grew up in a devout Seventh-day Adventist family. From a very young age, his mother taught him scripture, taught him many of the same things that we believe in as Adventists. And in his home, there was a picture of the 10 Commandments. And for each commandment, there was a small illustration of that commandment. And one of the commandments which really stood out to Desmond was the picture of Cain standing over Abel with the words, "Thou shalt not kill." This specific picture. And when he saw this picture, he felt very inspired by it. And it became something that would affect him for the rest of his life as he was growing up. Because it taught him that he did not have the authority to take a life created in God's image. Only God had the authority to take a life. And so soon after, as Desmond was becoming a young man, World War II started. And during this time, a mandatory draft was enacted requiring all men aged 21 to 35 to join the military. Desmond also had to join. But joining the military conflicted with his faith, with his convictions. He didn't believe in combat. So he chose to join as a conscientious objector, which means he would not be engaging in any combat in the war because of his religious beliefs. And this again goes back to the picture that he had grown up seeing, Cain standing over Abel. He believed every man was created in God's image, and he had no authority to be engaging in combat, taking lives. And so imagine what would happen if you joined the military, but you told your officer, "I'm not going to be engaging in any combat." Do you think you would be well received and treated well by your commanders or by your fellow soldiers? From day one, Desmond was ridiculed. He was made fun of. Fellow soldiers threw boots at him while he was praying. He also observed the Sabbath just like us. He refused to take part in any type of work. And even this became something that everyone made fun of him of. He was called a coward, a fool, and many worse things. Many officers tried to have him discharged and court-martialed. They wanted to get rid of him. He was assigned the most degrading duties that no one wanted to do. And one of his commanders even told him, "Desmond, you are going to get yourself killed, and you are also going to get my men killed because of your behavior." In the spring of 1945, Desmond's unit was assigned to fight in a place called the Maeda Escarpment or Hacksaw Ridge. And this was in Okinawa. You can see the picture in front of you. This was a 400-foot tall cliff, and the Americans had to climb up using ladders. And when they got to the top, they had to fight against the Japanese military. The Japanese already had a fort at the very top of this hill. And so you can imagine they had a very advantageous position. They were able to shoot any men as they were climbing up the ridge and also once they got to the top. And so this was a very disadvantageous position for the Americans, and they quickly started losing a lot of men. They lost so many men, in fact, that they had to start retreating. The Americans started falling back. They couldn't win. And so Desmond was also part of this battle on top of the ridge, alone, unarmed, and in enemy territory. He didn't have any weapons with him. But as all of the other soldiers were retreating to safety, he stayed on the ridge. He started crawling through the enemy fire and finding men who were wounded. Once he found a man, he carried the wounded soldier on his back, went back to the edge of the cliff, and then lowered each man with a rope, using his own strength. And the entire night he worked in the darkness, finding as many men as he could, trying to save as many lives as possible. By the morning, he had managed to rescue 75 men. And as he was working through the night, he kept praying one thing: Lord, help me get just one more. Just one more. Unfortunately, there was a price that he paid for his bravery. He was wounded by a grenade which shattered the bones in his legs. And despite this, he rolled off the stretcher to give his spot to another soldier who was wounded even more critically. And then while he was crawling to safety, he was shot through the arm by a sniper rifle. And then when he was wounded in his arm, he finally had to use a weapon. Not to attack anyone, but to make a splint for his broken arm. In the aftermath of Hacksaw Ridge, he finally received recognition for what he had done. His commanding officer, the same officer who had told him, "You're going to get yourself and my men killed," later said, "He was the bravest man I ever knew." He was also awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor by the President, Harry Truman, who said, "I consider this a greater honor than being president," as he was giving the award to Desmond. So this is an amazing story, but how does it relate to the Bible? What are some parallels that we can find? The first is the story of David and Goliath. Just like the Americans were fighting against the Axis forces in World War II, the Israelites were fighting the Philistines, and David volunteered to take on Goliath, who no other man had been able to defeat. Saul offered David his armor, but David refused. In 1 Samuel 17:39, he says, "I cannot go in these because I am not used to them." And what did all of the Israelites expect would happen to David? He didn't take any armor. He didn't even go in with a weapon. He just went with his faith in God and the sling and 5 stones. With this, he was able to defeat Goliath. And the same thing happened with Desmond. The army told him he needed to take weapons. He refused. He went into battle with just 3 things: his faith, his Bible, and his hands. The next parallel is the fiery furnace. We all know the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. In 1 Daniel 3:16-18, which was the scripture reading, They tell the king that even if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, and even if God does not deliver us, we will not bow down to you. And that is the key thing. They didn't know whether God would save them, but they still had unconditional obedience. In the same way, Desmond didn't know if he would survive Hacksaw Ridge, but he still obeyed. He still did what he needed to, just like those 3 men in the fire. The next biblical parallel is Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel continued to pray openly 3 times a day, even after a law was passed making it punishable by death. Again, he was obedient even though he did not know what the outcome would be. In the same way, Desmond prayed openly in his barracks while other soldiers were throwing boots at him and making fun of him. He even kept the Sabbath under threat. He refused to compromise his convictions. Like Daniel, he refused to let the pressure of the world silence his relationship with God. So what happened to Desmond after Hacksaw Ridge? He returned home with severe injuries and tuberculosis. And during treatment, he lost his hearing, and he even lost an entire lung. Despite that, he lived a quiet life with his wife, Dorothy. He never sought any fame for what he had done. Quite the opposite, he was reluctant to speak about his experiences, and he continued giving all credit to God. At the age of 87, he passed away in 2006, and this was 10 years before a movie was made about his life called Hacksaw Ridge. His son, Desmond Doss Jr., said, "He never bragged about what he did. He always said it was God and not him. He just showed up. God did the rest." What are the applications that we can take away for our own lives when we look at the life of Desmond Doss? The first application is settle your convictions before the storm. Desmond didn't decide on the battlefield whether to carry a gun or not. He had made this decision long before, when he was growing up in his childhood home, when he saw the picture of Cain standing over the body of Abel. And then when the pressure situation came, his convictions were already strong. In the same way, we must settle our convictions in the quiet times before the storms arrive. In Joshua 24:15, we read, "But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." That is a decision we all can make before we face challenges. The next application we can take away is trust, don't demand understanding. In Proverbs 3:5-6, we read, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." Desmond didn't know that he would survive Hacksaw Ridge, but he trusted God. He trusted that God would have the best outcome for him, regardless. In the same way, we are called to trust God, no matter what situation we are in. The third application is God uses availability, not ability. Desmond was not the best soldier on the battlefield. In fact, he was a soldier without weapons. How was he supposed to fight? He did not have the ability as a warfighter, but he made himself available to God. When he was saving the men at Hacksaw Ridge, he just kept praying one thing: "Lord, help me get one more." That is a prayer any of us can pray in our own lives, in our own difficulties. And the fourth application is the faith that you don't hide becomes a light. In Matthew 5:16 we read, Let your light shine before the others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. At the start, Desmond's fellow soldiers and officers looked down on him. They mistreated him. They made fun of his faith. But at the end, they became believers because of the example that he had set. We may not be fighting in a war, but we can still live lives that inspire others, that bring others to Christ. And so, as we leave today, let's remember, when Desmond was going up to Hacksaw Ridge, he didn't go with any weapons. He went with his faith, his hands, and his Bible. The world had told him that he would fail. The world had said you need training, you need weapons in order to survive in the war. But Desmond knew something that the world didn't know. He knew he wasn't going up to the battlefield alone. Every man he lowered to safety was an answer to a prayer, and every step through enemy fire was in the protection of God. God is still looking for people like Desmond today, not the strongest or most talented, just the willing, just the obedient, just those who will show up, stand firm for what they believe in, and pray the same prayer that Desmond prayed when he was on Hacksaw Ridge. Lord, just help me get one more. Will you be that person that God is looking for today?